Our first presenter is Jennifer Davis. She's the CMO of Honeywell Home and Building Technologies, which is a division of the Environmental and Energy Solutions business. In this role, she helps lead innovation and growth in connected homes and buildings. Jennifer's career spans from startups to Fortune 500 companies. She's a high-energy senior executive who uses entrepreneurial skills to build high-performing businesses, product lines, and go-to-market strategies. Her talk today is on Tales of an Experienced Amateur, How to Thrive When Things Change. At this point, I'll turn the controls over to Jennifer. I hope you enjoy today's session of Marketing Mob Talks.
Hi, everyone. This is Jennifer Davis, and as Anel said, I run marketing for a division of Honeywell. And today I'm going to be talking about Tales of an Experienced Amateur and sharing some thoughts on how to thrive in times of change. But first, a little of my story and some context. 2017 has made me an expert on change. After several years of relative stability, I embarked on a huge scope of change last year. I took a new job with a new company, working for a new boss in a new city, which prompted that I pack up my family, including 2 kids, to move to a new city across the country, into a new apartment, and then into a condo, and now we're remodeling a house, enrolling the kids in a new school, and finding and building a new community. Whew, it was a lot. And it was our own path of totality as we traveled from Portland, Oregon to Atlanta, Georgia. So any of you who followed the eclipse this year basically got to see the path that we were on. And this amount of change has been at times dizzying, disorienting, exciting, and energizing. Basically, I've experienced motion sickness, and I figure you've experienced some yourself. Perhaps you find yourself in a new situation with a new set of responsibilities, some new stakeholders or new influences, and whether navigating new waters, riding along a bumpy new road, or having circumstances change suddenly, some motion sickness is really hard to avoid. And so today I'm going to share 3 strategies that I've been deploying this year in this head-spinning year of mine. So first off, the first piece of advice I have is get comfortable making mistakes. When I started the new job this past summer, I was back to being an amateur, and I don't know about you, but no matter how many years of experience one might have doing anything, when you start something new, by definition, it's new. And people learning things inevitably make mistakes. And I hate making mistakes. I'm a type A overachiever type, and every place I've ever worked has had a culture of problem solving and lean principles, have us monitoring and managing variation. We just don't like making mistakes. But I've had some practice over this past year making mistakes and have found that they have not been fatal. And it's good to remember that as a beginner, you can have a refreshing point of view and take some new insights. Steve Jobs called this being a beginner again, and being less sure about everything helped him at times enter into creative periods. And time will tell if this is a highlight of a creative period in my life, but I will tell you that it's been good to cultivate a sense of adventure, and this sense of being an amateur is something we have to nurture in today's dynamic and technology-driven environment because things are constantly changing. And that's, of course, as they say, the only constant. So if an experienced person finds themselves as an amateur, fear of making mistakes can weigh heavy and be a worry. So how do we free ourselves to make mistakes and take risks and give our leadership a fresh perspective and a sense of urgency? Well, the fastest way that I have found is to really change your mindset and your frame of reference. What if mistakes that you make along the way of learning are not really real? What if they represent not failure, but a lack of imagination? Thomas Edison, one of the most prolific inventors of our times, is credited to responding to a critic by saying, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Well, I've been on my own journey of finding ways that don't work in different areas of my life. And I find that cultivating this kind of attitude has allowed me to free up from any paralyzing fear of failure. And there's some amazing new discoveries that were accidental or based on mistakes. The microwave oven, super glue, artificial sweetener, Teflon, even the Slinky that you see here in this image are all accidental inventions. And what began as a failed adhesive for one project became perfect for another, and thus we have Post-it notes. So I do feel that, you might have a spring that you dropped on the floor during some naval experiment, like the officer did who invented the Slinky, and you may find yourself with one of the most memorable and creative toys in history, right? Who's to say? It's really a framing and an attitude difference. So what have been my Slinkies? Well, I say I'm pretty good at reframing mistakes along the way and learning from them. But this week alone, I've misjudged the importance of a key business insight. I misread some cues from colleagues, and I found that one can't perfectly plan out and execute every detail of a cross-country move and a house remodel. So I know that might be a surprise to everyone but me, huh? But throughout all of that, I find that I'm still here and I'm growing through it. So next time you make a mistake, after you apologize and do whatever you can to mitigate the immediate cleanup, ask yourself the question, based on these outcomes that I've observed, what should I learn from this? What problem would this be a solution for? These are all important things to keep in mind. Recently on an airplane, I watched a movie called The Last Word, in which Shirley MacLaine had this great little speech, and she said, you don't make mistakes. Mistakes make you. Mistakes make you smarter, they make you stronger, and they make you more self-reliant. So perhaps the next time you make a mistake, the things that you're developing the most might be yourself. So this leads to my second idea, and that is focus. Focus on a few priorities. When I moved to Atlanta, I set some goals for work, of course, but I also set some goals for myself. I was needing to build a community in the Atlanta area. I'd lived on the West Coast for a long time and was walking away from a ready network of that I cultivated in Portland over decades that were ready to support me with expertise, providing help in filling open positions, or providing me much needed counsel when I needed it. So when I decided to move to Atlanta, I had a list of catching up to do. I had a lot of catching up to do. So I put together a plan of attack, which began with contacts in Portland, asking them for introductions, through friends and colleagues and vendors who knew people here in Atlanta. I've attended some local events through the Technology Association of Oregon, through an introduction from the Technology Association of Oregon that introduced me to the sister organization in Georgia. The Atlanta Business Chronicle was an introduction through the Portland Business Journal, which is a sister publication. And groups like the American Marketing Association and others have regional chapters. So all of these things, I was putting together a network and have just started to build that. Interestingly for me, the 6 people that I knew in Atlanta before I moved, I've only met in face-to-face with 2 of them, and they were probably the ones I knew the least. So the network didn't begin where I thought it would, and it's grown in really surprising ways. In fact, I was introduced to this podcast by another guest, Angela Nathan. And again, we met in an unexpected way. So these things, as we make active introductions, as we put ourselves out there, is just an example of meeting a goal and building on that positive momentum. So the real test of priorities and strategies is deciding what you're not going to do. So I have to say that in order to focus on my new job and relationship building, I've deprioritized some other things. And I haven't really gotten to know Atlanta very well from a driving perspective. Spoiled by my GPS and the fact that I take the MARTA train every day to my office in Midtown, I almost never drive very often or very far, which perhaps in this chapter of my life, I've given up my driving skills and let them atrophy a bit, but other skills have been stretched and stressed so that they're growing. So in other words, I'm going to be a great candidate for a self-driving car someday because I have a valid Georgia driver's license and virtually no driving ability left. So hopefully that'll be an encouragement to all of you who are making priorities in your life. And this leads me to my final point, that in the midst of change, it's really important to not forget who you are. To further torture this motion sickness analogy that I mentioned earlier, one of the common causes of dizziness is dehydration. And to avoid dehydration, they recommend drinking enough water and eating regularly and sleeping soundly. In other words, you can't neglect your health and happiness and expect your body to perform at its peak. Most of us have multiple interests at work and beyond work. And in times of change, it's important to really nourish those curiosities. At work, look for ways to learn new skills or expand your contributions. Again, not hard to do in times of change. And in your personal life, don't neglect the things that feed you, like your family or hobbies, time with friends, or time in reflection, or time in nature. I just returned from a women's retreat at nearby Lake Lanier, and during which the speaker led us through an insights discovery, those personality or communication style profiles that matches what you self-described as acronyms to these Jungian profiles to arrive at self-discovery. I'm a junkie for these kind of things, and it was good to be reminded that I'm an extrovert, so I need to spend time doing fun things with people, and that's how I recharge. So if I spend too much time in long budget meetings, combing spreadsheets for insights, proofreading presentations, or shopping for shopping for the best price on the living room rug, which is something I did this past weekend, my battery can get really low. And when my battery's low, I lose my ability to run the background applications of kindness and patience. And I don't know about you, but those are really important background applications that you don't want crashing on you. And so the fastest way I have found to do some of those things for me is to take the time and be purposeful about it. So there might be a few more concerts at Eddie's Attic. There might be a few more sporting events, an art project with friends, maybe even a day at the spa like this girl, maybe with a signature cocktail. And perhaps you need time alone to recharge, or spend time in your spin class, or curled up with a good book, or organizing your sock drawer, or weeding your garden, or singing bad karaoke. Whatever it is, remember that you need to keep your perspective. You've been experiencing a lot of change, and so it's really important that you nurture other parts of yourselves, because you're more than your business card. You're a three-dimensional person with three-dimensional interests and talents, and taking care of yourself will allow you to thrive and change. And you might just crush it, like this little puppy here. The idea of change is so much easier than actually changing. Have you found that? The idea of wanting to learn new things sounds great, but learning is hard, and frankly, it makes you feel stupid. And the idea of personal growth is awesome, but in reality, it comes wrapped in failure, self-doubt, and a ton of inconvenience. Daniel Ek, a Swedish entrepreneur and technologist who you might know as the co-founder of Spotify, recently tweeted, "I can't think of anyone I admire who isn't fueled by self-doubt. It's an essential ingredient. It's the grit in the oyster. It's the passion, perseverance, and stamina that we must channel in order to stick with our dreams until they become reality." And I love the picture that paints of an oyster, wrapping this irritation or something as disruptive as uncomfortable as change in layers of persistence until the pearl is created. Without the pain, you don't get the pearl. So come to find out, oysters are not self-motivated. And the same may be true with us. It's the change, it's the irritation, it's the pain at times that makes us, first by making us an experienced amateur, and then giving us the grit in our oyster to help us achieve our dreams and goals. So I would love to connect with each one of you. And I maintain a blog at jenniferdavis.com and regularly post on LinkedIn Pulse, and I can be found tweeting at Jennifer Davis. And I'd love to hear from each of you your own stories of being an experienced amateur and what you did to navigate times of change, because I'm still in the midst of it, and I bet you are too. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Again, if you have any questions for her, you can reach out to her. via the contact information listed on the screen, or you can email me and I can forward your questions to her at abarnett@marketing-mob.com.